It's time for the podcast, which is all about the world of marketing on television through TV, shopping networks, and infomercials. Are we on the air? I'm your host, Sean Wilsey, and for over 29 years, I've hosted shows on cable shopping networks, generating billions of dollars in sales. Now I want to be your guide into this world, explaining how it works, why it works, what doesn't work, and introduce you to the people who are making it the success that it is today. In fact, on the heels of that final note right there, following this show and the next show, we're going to start working some of those other people on the air. Bob Circosta, I've just chatted with. He's going to be joining me. And Marv Siegel, who is the son of the gentleman who's responsible for QVC. So really two of the most important people that I could talk to will be the first couple guests that I have in the coming weeks, but a couple other things that I want to take care of first. And I think we'll have some fun with this one. I hope we do anyways. I hope we have some fun because this is a show that is largely put together by you. I had a friend of mine actually point out, after my third episode, he said, a lot of us that have known you forever, have worked with you, we get what you're doing here, but there's people who are going to be listening that don't know that much about you. And so I'm going to take some time, and I thought, let's open up the forum to general questions about this industry, because I want this to be a platform where you can go and learn about the world of infomercials, television shopping networks, direct marketing, and maybe along the way then help you to get into this, because I know there's people listening who would love to get into this industry. And so I asked on my Facebook for questions to me that you would love to ask any home shopping host or me in particular, and I'm going to start answering some of those questions now. And my Facebook, by the way, I really don't go there much, but if you want to check it out, it's just facebook.com, SWILSIE. And one of the first questions that came in, and I thank Andrew for this, what is the mental process behind the scenes of having to present a product you personally have no enthusiasm for? And this is something that happens to everyone. Every host on every shopping network has to face this. We are told as hosts, it's like hosting 101, you don't have favorites and don't show any favoritism towards products. And it can be tough to do. But what do you do then when you have no enthusiasm for a product? The short answer is you suck it up and you get out there and you present that, because there is someone who cares a great deal about that. You present it. Now, and again, this is where there's a fine line sometimes between selling, which is what we do on Shop LC, and they do it on jewelry television still to this day, and what you see more on the other networks where it's just presenting products. It's listing information. It's having a conversation about it. You can tell when I'm more enthused about something, since I'm in a sales role more than a hosting role at Shop LC, because I really get into it. Now, what if I really don't like it, Adam, that well? Well, guess what? I really get into it. Is it disingenuous? No. It's what I'm paid to do. And I'm out there doing my job. So my mental process for getting ready for that is just, well, again, I tell myself, suck it up. You need to present this. And so just do a very good professional job with it. It goes with the territory. You are going to have items that, you're not necessarily the biggest fan of. And again, it's a little bit easier on a QVC or an HSN where you're presenting more than actual selling. And we'll talk more about that in an upcoming show. And in fact, this ties together with another question from D. Have you ever had a product you refused to show? Love this question, and the answer is yes. 2 separate occasions, actually. I have had a product that I refused to show. One was right after 9/11. If you remember back then, pretty much everything went off the air for a few days. Every cable network, everything, they just kind of shut down. They either simulcast a news channel or whatever. We did the same thing. My first day back live, I was doing a coin show. And back then, there was a big trend of taking silver eagle coins, American Eagle coins, and doing an enameling of an image over the coin. Well, we had, there must have been 4 or 5 that were in the show that were just, I felt almost overtly patriotic. It's just, wow, we're just really going overboard with the patriotism on one of these. But I presented them, and this goes back to, again, I went out there, I sold them, except for one. There was one coin that had an image of the Pentagon and I think it was an airplane. It was something that was flying over it that was casting a shadow down onto the Pentagon. At least that's how it was supposed to look. What it looked like was where the plane had crashed into the Pentagon. And I adamantly said, no, I am not selling this. Fire me. I am not selling this. Second occasion was I was doing a show of entertainment collectibles, things that somehow autograph pictures and books and things like that. And I was supposed to sell the autobiography of the guy, and I can't think of his name now, but he played Robin in the original Batman series. And the cover of his book was a close-up of, how do you put it gently, his groin area, I guess, in costume, but there was a woman's hand, like, going into his underwear. And no, even though the show was at midnight, because I was doing the 11 to 2 at the time, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., I thought there's going to be kids watching. I always have to run that through my head, too. Even though I don't have kids, I have nieces and nephews. I'm grown now, but still, would I want them seeing this? And I just thought, no, this is distasteful. And I do have to say, because this was back at Shop NBC at the time, I had the backing of management each time. They were great. And so they actually did have my back on that. So again, I just wanted to get to those two because they kind of tied together. John is asking, how does one get started being a host? That's a question that we're going to go into great detail on down the road when we start having some other experts on. Right now, how one starts off becoming a host is through an audition process. And it's, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's just put together a demo tape. Watch a shopping network that you want to work at, get a feel for what the hosts do, and put together a tape. Keep it short. Keep it under 3 minutes, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes, probably somewhere in there, and find out who's in charge of hiring their host. Networks are always looking for talent. Always. We at Shop LC right now, we need hosts. Every network is almost constantly looking for hosts because they hire some and they don't cut it, and so they need to replace them. You have hosts now that are getting to the point where we've been in this industry a long time. People are starting to retire. And so there's that effect now. It's not a job for everyone. Some people just don't care for it after doing it for a while, so they get out of it. I've got a few people lined up, a couple guests lined up that are former hosts that just did it for a while, got out of it. So we'll be talking to them. But there is a need for hosts, and that's another reason why I want to do this show. This series of shows, this ongoing podcast, is because I know that there's people who want to learn more about the industry because they want to get into the industry. I will say this, it's not just about knowledge. It's about personality. You have to have that, what I call, presence that people want in their living room. So you should be warm and welcoming. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to be spontaneous. The only thing I do here that's scripted is my little... Here, the opening and the closing. That's it. Everything else, off the cuff. I mean, I know where I want to go with things, but it's no different than at work. It's basically off the cuff. So you have to be able to talk for hours on end. And I know the person who wrote this, and he can talk for hours on end. So yes, John, you should. Leo said, what would you guess to be the next 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years from now best-selling line of products or services? I love this question. Because if you'd asked me that 5 years ago to predict what is popular now, I would have been wrong. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have been wrong. Now, a couple ways to approach this question, because first off, there is the whole what sells on TV element. Look at QVC. What is it? A lot of clothing and some skincare. Not a lot of jewelry anymore. because the margins are fantastic on clothing and beauty. So companies make a lot of money when they sell clothing, and especially beauty. So if I were to predict, I would say that's going to continue to be the big seller. Anything relating to clothing, beauty, jewelry's taking a back seat. Even at Shop LC, you'll notice we're doing less jewelry than we used to. It still sells, and it's still our bread and butter, but you're seeing a shift away from that. And jewelry was the backbone. Back in the days of Home Shopping Club, they were the largest jeweler in the country. Might have been in the world, now that I think about it. I'll ask Bob Circosta about that in a couple of weeks. But they were at one point the largest jeweler. They do very little jewelry now. It's mainly branded with a guest. So I think that trend is going to continue as well. Shop HQ, it's all about watches. That's their bread and butter. And I think that's going to continue for them as well in the foreseeable future. So I guess it depends on the network, maybe, is the answer to that. But again, I swear to you, I would have been wrong 5 years ago predicting what's hot today. So take that with a grain of salt, if you would. Chuck asked a very, very good question. How was it like working at Value Vision in the early days and all the changes in the later years from Shop NBC to Shop HQ? Do you still keep in touch with the host there? To a degree, yes. Candy Klepfer, I still chat with every once in a while. Ryan Johnson, the Invicta guest, he's one of my closest friends in the world, best friends in the world. I don't know a lot of their hosts anymore. I really don't. Melissa, I talked to Melissa briefly on Instagram a couple days ago. Natasha was a very good friend of mine when she was down here at Shop LC. She's back up there now. We keep in touch a little bit. And then he asked a question about Worldwide Shopping Source. I'm going to hold off on that for a little bit. But I want to go back. What was it like in the early days of Value Vision in the later years from Shop NBC to Shop HQ? Again, remember, I left when it was still Shop NBC. I was there 20 years. And it was fantastic watching that place grow. I remember in the very earliest days of Value Vision, when we had just started up, if the call center, the phone room got busy, literally executives, and we'd have a lot of executives then, we had the president, the CFO, CEO, Frank Keenan, I don't remember what his title was, but they would leave their desk and go to the phone room and answer phones. It was all hands on deck. Everybody did everything they could to help that company grow. And I think that's why, as I watched then, about 10 years in when the NBC people came in and bought their share of it, now we had to start worrying more about brand image because we had the Peacock logo on our screen. And so a lot of the fun things that we used to do, the wacky things, we can't do anymore because it's not good for the brand. You have to be brand conscious now. And so we started doing more presenting. It was less selling, and it was more presenting. Things became more planned out. Where, for instance, if I was doing a betting show and we were selling a set of sheets, we now had basically a flow we had to sell. So the first thing I would do is ask the guest, what's the thread count of these sheets? And then we talk about where the cotton is from. And then it was became very formulaic. Formulaic? What is that word I'm trying to say? There was a formula to it. But, and that was, for me, maybe the beginning of the end, about 5 years into that. And this, in fact, is going to tie in with a question that I'm going to get to in just a minute or two here. In fact, I'll follow up Chuck's question with it. Because you had to be so much more brand conscious. Now, I don't know what it's like there without the Peacock logo anymore. Maybe they're allowed to be a little bit more free. I'm guessing with some of the things that I've had people send me that they're doing on air that, yes, they are a little bit more free with what they can get away with. But God bless them. More power to them. But no, it was a fantastic time. I made it 20 years. And this actually ties in with the next question that I'm going to touch. Let me find it. And again, if I'm not getting to all your questions, because there's no way I can get to all these questions right now. From Phyllis, why did you leave Shop HQ, i.e. Value Vision? And again, it was Shop NBC at the time. And I want to answer this specifically to clear up some misconceptions, because after my last show, which you can see on my YouTube channel, there was a lot of speculation on the internet as to what the hell just happened because nobody saw this coming. Truth be told, I knew that that day, I think it's June 20th, I used to have it memorized, would be my last show. I had known since November of 2011. And this is where I'm going to start telling a story now that it literally, outside of the executive ranks of that building, I think 3 other people know the whole story. You know, the host at that channel operated under contracts. And I think at the time I was under a 3-year contract. And it was going to be up July 1st of, would have been 2012. So yeah, this was November 2011. Paul Kelly was my boss at the time, who used to be a host at QVC. And we always got on very well. And I respected him, he respected me. And we were sitting in his office, and we pretty much came to the conclusion that this contract right now would be my last. That I would not renew it, they would not renew it. It's just we were going to go our separate ways after 20 years. If they wanted to fire me, they would have fired me on the spot right there. That would have been easy to do. But the only caveat was I couldn't tell anyone. And so I had to live from November 2011 until that last show with nobody knowing. Now, I did tell my mother, and I told the person I was with at the time, and that was it, just because what was the contingency plan going to be? I knew that once I had that last show, I had a non-compete contract that I had to ride out. Non-competes are very standard in television. Mine at the time was 1 year. I asked if they would consider reducing it, and Paul Kelly thought that they probably would. He was hoping they'd take it to 6 months. They didn't. They took it to 9 months. So I knew that I was going to have 9 months where I could not work. And so, and again, this is why I will always thank, this is why I will not say a bad word about Shop NBC, Value Vision, Paul Kelly, the people there, because they treated me so well. They could have said, okay, well, if we're deciding that you're done on July 1st, you know what, you're done today. And that could have been it. But he trusted me to not tell anyone, and I didn't. Going into work that night, it was, to this day, the hardest night of work I've ever had, because I had to tell the people that I loved, my coworkers, that at 3 in the morning, it's done. It's over. My 20 years here is finished. I notified Carmela Richards. She was my co-host that night. I called her the afternoon before, just so she was prepared with what was going to happen that night. And we had a little cry on the phone there together, because she was with me day one, 20 years prior to that. And so it was time, though. I vividly remember Phyllis and friends one day driving through a Minnesota blizzard, stopped at an intersection on Hennepin Avenue. People in Minneapolis know it. And I was looking around at the snowbanks, and I thought to myself, I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. I can't do this. I'm not a snow person. Shortly thereafter, there was one night, again, I was doing the 11 to 2. In fact, it might have been the 2 a.m. shift at the time. And I was told, you got to get to work. Well, there's a blizzard here. I mean, I'll do my best. And was basically told, no, you have to get to work. And I remember it took me probably almost an hour to do a 20-minute drive because I had to go so slow. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. So it worked out good for me and for them. I was replaced by a Minnesota Vikings cheerleader because that's what they wanted at the time. And she lasted about 6 months there. I still don't even remember her name. She was nice enough to me, so no complaints there. But it worked out for the best. I'm happier doing my job now than I have been since probably the early days of Value Vision because of the freedom that we have at the network that I'm at now, Shop LC. Do I see myself doing it another 20 years? I hope I have another 20 years, at least 10. But no, that's why, because a lot of people said, oh, Wilsey was fired. He just had his last show. No, I really wasn't. Now, thank God for those months they gave me, because believe me, I had to scrimp up and save a lot of money because I knew I was going to be living 9 months with no paycheck coming in. So I saved up a lot of money, and they were very nice that they still let me get my severance. So I had that, which after taxes is not that great. But so that's the long answer of why I left what was then Shop NBC. It's funny, though. I had someone tell me, Lior, who used to be a guest of mine on watch shows, he said to me, I could tell you threw in the towel about 5 years ago. This was right after I was done there. And he's right. He's right. I really had. It was in the back of my head. I thought, I can't do this forever. It's just I'm bored. I'm sitting here. The guest is the expert. I have all the knowledge. I know what I'm doing, but I got to let the guests talk. Got to let them do their thing, and that was the format they wanted. So anyway, do I have time for one? Let's squeeze in one more here. So many good questions that, again, I cannot get to absolutely every single one. Jonathan said, how have you maintained your career with everything that's been going on through the changing times? I think I might have answered that, but actually maybe not specifically, because you do have to change with the times. And when Value Vision became Shop NBC and it started to become more relaxed presentations, I had to evolve with that. I had to change with the times and do that. I'm at a network now that does a totally different format. I had to adapt. I had to do that. And I think that's part of success in this job is being able to adapt. How do you adapt to changing situations and changing times? Where's this industry going to be 5 years from now? Will we still even be on television? Will we just be the... I don't know. But I hopefully, knock wood, am going to adapt with it and adapt to it. And that's what a successful host will do, is they have to learn to adapt. When Home Shopping Club became Home Shopping Network, they basically flipped a switch overnight in the mid-1990s, did away with their old format, did away with the price games, and they had the hosts sitting down. I remember emailing Dan Dennis, who was one of their hosts at the time, because he had just done an hour of Italian porcelain pots, and little decorative pots and vases. And I remember thinking, Dan is hating every second of this, because this is not what Home Shopping Club was. And so I sent him an email and just said, I watched, and you looked like you were in hell. And he basically replied, yeah, you have no idea. But Dan did adapt. He did adapt. Not all of the Home Shopping Club hosts did adapt to the change in formats. Dan adapted, stayed there for a few more years, then came here, joined us here for a little bit, and so it is an interesting job. And I think, frankly, that's one of the reasons I like the job so much, is because it does change all the time. It is not predictable. It is not something that you go into work every single day and know what to expect. And I think that's some of the fun of that. Listen, we've already gone on long enough here. We'll continue this on our next show with some more questions, and I do hope that you will check me out at my day job as a host for the Shop LC Television Shopping Network. You can find me Wednesday through Saturday, generally Wednesday through Saturday, between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, then again from 3 to 5 p.m. Please follow me on Twitter at Shawn Wilsey, ShawnWilsie, and on Instagram at SWilsey. Thank you for downloading this edition of Are We on the Air? Part 2 of this next time. Until then, this has been a King Bobby production.